Oh man. Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about Mike Mignola. And when I decided to do this, because I've been talking to people, seeing who's their favorite artists, and I clearly got some people saying Mike, because let's be honest, Hellboy is probably a really well known character out there. Besides from Marvel and DC characters, Hellboy, he has been an amazing character. Uh, let's never forget also Spawn. I will do Todd McFarlane someday. Don't worry. But now I'm going to talk about Mike. And to be honest, what I have in my images right now is mainly Hellboy art. Now I know that he's worked for DC and Marvel, and there's some pieces out there for those companies, but I just didn't find one that was Mignola. I mean, I found his art, but it's his art in Hellboy. It's Hellboy. His art does not belong in DC or Marvel. It's very unique, very different. And to be honest, I can't place it in a specific art style. For example, I can't say that it would ever belong to an art style. For example, I would say that it's closer to Picasso if Picasso actually knew how to draw. That is really evil. I'm sorry. If you guys like Picasso, I don't absolutely hate him. I'm not a great fan of his art because I'm more of a, well, I don't really know how to call myself, but I do prefer realistic art over those sketches. Now, what I mean by Mike Mignola being Pablo, if you knew how to draw, is that his art is not, completely abstract, but there's clearly a touch of it. Now, what Mike does is that he takes out a lot of details and he just brings you what he thinks you need to understand the picture. He doesn't really care about anatomy or if it's perfect. He just cares to bring you an image of what he wants you to see. For example, what you have right here is a bunch of tombs in what it's probably a graveyard, and you don't need to know what they're saying, or they don't need to be exactly tomb like. You just need to look at the first two that are in front of the vampire, and then you realize that the rest of them are so the for example the ones next to Hellboy don't need to be exactly tomb like. They just need to have this little touch to them, like there's more than just those on the front, there's some on the back too. Also, something I want to point out in his art is that I don't often see a lot of shadow play. It's really line play. In this picture, you can see some shadows, but they are mostly interpreted by dark tones instead of being by gray tones, which means that he can just do lines or portray this darker tone just by playing with black and not using the grays. You can see some grayish colors, but it's not his main focus. His main focus is dark, and I really like most of his pieces in black and white. I think that they do really well. If I had a Hellboy comic black and white, it would be more than amazing for me. I wouldn't mind if there's no color to it. Black, white, and for example, red in his art would also work. It's like some artists that I talked before. I always talk about this. Most artists, when they do their art, it can be just in black and white and you would still understand. Now, I'm not talking about every artist. For example, I wouldn't like Ashley's art in just black and white. I mean, for I wouldn't like it if it wasn't, well, how do I say, shadow like. Because for example, I'm saying for example too much. Well, today, this always goes great. You know, I'm trying to get my English together. Also, like always, links will be down for his stuff, and I doubt that you don't know Hellboy, but I forgot to mention that before. Now, moving on to what I was saying, some artists just black and white doesn't fit them because they need the grays, and now that's a different kind of art. If you add the gray, then you're adding shadows, and if you add shadows, then you are adding a 3D or different style to your drawing. If you're only putting black and white, literally only putting black and white, then you're making a very simplistic style, which at the same time can be very complex, but you're only working with lines, which is very complicated. I, for example, love working with only lines, and some of my works do have grays. Now, I know that the difference between my works with grays and black and white is extremely different. For example, I have a piece that's Batgirl, and I have a piece that's Luke and Leia. And the difference between those two is just over the top because one of them I play with sentimental issues, which one of them is more meaningful than the other to me. Batgirls is more meaningful with only the darks and with only black and white because the black always brings you, more detail, but at the same time, it can pass you feelings that when I did my Look and Leia piece, by using the grays, I was bringing some light into it. I wasn't giving it, fully dark tone, which I could have. Uh, Also in that piece, the darker character is actually Leia, because Leia's gone and Luke isn't. So I made Luke be the one with the grayish colors, and Leia be the one with dark grays and black. And bringing any kind of color, even gray, into a picture can make it a whole different story. Now I wanted to show you here just a black and white piece, surrounded by red, which I said before, if his art was to work with only those three colors, it could probably still work. I'm amazed that they went for the decision of not putting the rose red and just making, the everything around red, but the rose is white. Now, you gotta simply love the fact that there's only in the figure there's only black and white, and you can still see all the detail to it. The buttons, the chain below his waist, his hand on the other side with a little bangle on on the other side, on the left side, and on the right side, the book and the hand on it. I love how it's noticeable, and at the same time, it's kind of abstract in certain areas. Where would I say it's abstract? Clearly, I would say more to the left than to the right, because the right uses a lot of whites to still show you where you are, and in the left, it doesn't. You have to guess, but you can clearly see that it's a jacket, almost all the way through. Then a little vest, the machine with the tubes popping out, and a rose, which is the head. Now, I really appreciate how he does stuff. It's clearly not my favorite kind of art, but it is a good one, and I would never say that, his art doesn't deserve recognition because, first of all, he brought this kind of art to an era that art like this wasn't, well, it's not that it wasn't well known because, for example, Judge Dredd, I think at the time was already a thing, and for me, his art is, well, not DC or Marvel. It's different. Or, for example, I don't remember exactly what at the time was going on, but Mignola's style was a very different style. And he was lucky that when he got out of working for the big teams, he actually had an opportunity to write his story, Hellboy, with Dark Horse, which, you know, lucky him, he's well known nowadays. He is one of the greatest. And I love Hellboy, first of all. Like I've said before, when I saw um, Roger's art of his Hellboy, I really like it. Uh, I clearly like Mignola's Hellboy still. No issue with it. It's something that you can read really fast, if anything, because, well, first of all, you can look at it really fast. You have to read because his books do have, quite a bit of text to them. Not in every panel, but there are some panels which you do have to pay some attention to what you're looking at and what you're reading. Now, panels are usually simplistic. Over here, I'm showing you just a piece of the Predator. Totally forgot to say. Uh, I think he does, usually what he likes, and at this point, he can do whatever he wants. So it's good to see that he still, doesn't do only Hellboy, but he does other stuff too. Now, what I was saying is, in Hellboy, almost every panel is very simplistic, almost abstract in its own sense, but at the same time, it has a lot of meaning. Now, I call it abstract art because, while I'm calling his art close to abstract art, due to the fact that what he does is he disproportionates uh, some of his stuff. Now, not everything, clearly. Uh, he does some things with proportion. For example, in this picture, the soldier's arm and body is not that out of touch. Also, the soldiers around, their bodies fit really well with the picture. But at the same time, in some of his arts, for example, some of his elbows are not so well formed as others. Their bodies are disproportionate, like I said before. And still, it works really well. You don't need Hellboy to be perfect. You don't need the story to be extremely well drawn and detailed to know what is happening. It can be just, simplistic. Uh, and you'd still know what is going on. Now, like I said before, if it was only three colors, and here we have more than three colors, but you can still see that the main two is the blacks and the reds. Now, this is something that is very common in his art. Almost every color is just shut down, and the important ones are usually his black and the red. Now, this is due to the nature of the comic itself because, it's a very dark toned comic with some death, some horror stuff, some less horror stuff, but more, uh, how do I put it? Police kind of stuff. Forgot how you call those. But either way, those everybody knows that Hellboy, those two colors are very important, the red and the black. Now, I couldn't imagine Hellboy being another color. If he was blue, then I would be like, this is a major mistake. This character could have been, red, and it wasn't. Now, I'm very glad that he did him red. I mean, it fits very well. He is the devil. Uh, well, he is a devil. And still making him red and making him nice at the same time, and then making, this whole team. Still, even if you say, oh, but Abe is blue, and he is in this comic, and his color is quite important. Well, his color isn't important, to be honest. His blue is, well, not as shiny as the reds, is it? It's not as bright. It's not as, well, it's not as impressive as the red is, for example. But he is an important character, don't get me wrong. Now, here's a piece with some blues, which is what I was talking about. And you can say, oh, but the most important thing here is the blue. And no, it is not. It is not the first thing that you look at, and is not the most important thing. The most important thing here is, again, the red in Hellboy and the dark tone to it, because those are two things that appeal to the comic. And then as you shift your eyes, the second thing you see is not the blue again, it's actually the crown. So first of all, you look at the blood, second of all, you look at the crown, and then you look at the bluish tone. That's where your eyes follow usually. In case you look at it in another way, well, I looked at it like that. So I'm sorry that I have this weird way of looking into stuff, but it's my own personal way. The art review is my way of looking at their art, is my way of my brain, how it understands their art. I don't want to get any hate. I'm doing this because I actually like their art, and there are some things I love, some things I don't really enjoy, and I will talk about them because it's a review of their work, and there's always good and bad in anything that you do. So here we go again. And still doesn't fail that, the the red and the dark is the most important thing. I mean, it will keep on being, and it's never going to change my opinion into what colors are important in Hellboy. But also, I wanted to point out over here, see, practically no shadows that use gray to do them. The only gray shadow that is really important here is on the doctor's face. As you can see, it's not really a black shadow, it's gray. But here's the reason why: because it's glass. And glass doesn't reflect black, it reflects grayish when it comes to shadows. It's more likely for it to do the grays than it is to do the black color, because it's very intense color, and glasses are not intense at all. Another image. Now this one is not so dark, and there you go, there's a lot of things going on. I have never read if this is a comic, because I don't know if this art, I don't remember. I don't think I've ever read it, if it is, or if it is part of a comic. I know that it says 20 years and it has a signature in 2013. So, it's a very special thing. But I had never seen this piece before. Still, doesn't matter how much you'd like to tell me that Abe's color is important, if you'd like to tell me that at all. You can clearly see that the most important color in this image is Hellboy, and it's not only because he is the main character. Usually the red in his other characters, that when Mignola draws them, if they have a little bit of red, um, it will be the most important color in them, besides the black, because Mignola really likes those two colors. No, probably because, the dark team again. Once again, without showing you Hellboy, it's like I've said, the red is the most important color, no matter if you are the main character or if you're just a secondary character or if you're just a background character. Mike Mignola really does like to put characters in that color, and that's it. Uh, that's it. That's how he does them. No reason to fight about that. I just cut myself. Ignoring it. Moving on. So you can. I like the fact that red is an important color because it makes sense with the comics. Oh, here we go. Here's a piece that has some color change and shadows. Now, it's not fully dark shadows, and that's why I chose this one. This one, due to a light source, the shadows go from gray to black. But still, black is very important. No matter what, no matter how much you look at it. That's what I wanted to say. Blacks are more important than the grays, and the light source clearly gives some light to Hellboy, and his skin is not uh, fully red, but when it becomes red, then it goes to a darker red into the black. As you can see in his arm, it goes from a darker red to a little bit of black right beside where his arm cuts off and it starts the jacket. I like this one. I really do. You can see some skulls, some of them, more perfect, other of them, not so worked on. Then the background is just background. It gives you some forms, but you can really see what they are. It's just shapes randomly. And the skeleton above Hellboy, which is a little bit worked on, but not too much, clearly. It's a background character. A background character, a background skeleton. Last but not least, this piece. Because the person who told me to do this, first of all, he loves Hellboy. Second of all, first of all, he loves Hellboy, but before he told me that he wanted me to, he didn't want me, that he wanted to say Mike Mignola, he said some other names, and then he said Mignola is certainly up there, and his picture is from the guy that you see at the back, where he has this lobster claw on him, and his name is Lobster Johnson, which is really funny. Cause, I get it. It's people like Hellboy, and sometimes they have favorite characters that aren't Hellboy in the series itself. I personally favorite character is Hellboy. Of course, I like some of the other characters. I would never dislike any of them, but I found it funny, and so because his picture and his name refer to that character, there you go. There's a picture with him, Hellboy, and then a soldier, which is also, let's not forget that Mignola's Hellboy has some references to Nazis. So if you get easily triggered and you've never read Mignola for some goddamn reason, which is really weird because I know some people who have just seen the movies. Also, we're getting a movie next year. I was actually very excited. to see that happening. I was kind of weirded out, and I still love the fact that Mila is going to be in the movie. But we gotta wait and see how good it is, because I know some people didn't like the list of actors, some people didn't like the way that he looked, and others just didn't like the comic that they were following. All I have to say is there will it will probably not be a perfect replica of the comics. There's no way that it would ever happen. If it does, that's amazing. But I just wanted to leave with a note that Mignola's art is Mignola's art. If until now you haven't liked what I've shown you, if you haven't liked the fact that his art is not abstract fully, but it's not so worked on as some other people, then just don't. And that's it. Bye.